What made some Golden Age actors the talk of every studio lot? Was it their charm, their confidence, or something else entirely that had leading ladies completely entranced? Hollywood in its golden years was built on mystery, but a few men carried reputations that couldn't stay quiet for long. These weren't just handsome faces, they were legends whispered about in dressing rooms and across red carpets. So which stars left co-stars completely spellbound? Let's find out. Number 15, Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum wasn't the kind of actor who needed to boast. His lazy grin, sleepy eyes, and deep voice said more than words ever could. He walked through old Hollywood like a man who knew he didn't have to try too hard, and that confidence was magnetic. Directors called him unpredictable. Actresses called him unforgettable. Mitchum's reputation began long before gossip columns caught on. On screen, he embodied danger wrapped in charm, playing tough guys with soft edges in films like Out of the Past and The Night of the Hunter. Off-screen, his calm, almost amused attitude made him seem untouchable. People said he was part cowboy, part poet, a man who could fight, flirt, and philosophize all in the same breath. Actresses who worked with him often admitted he had a kind of quiet intensity that pulled everyone in. It wasn't forced or practiced, it was natural, effortless, like he didn't care whether you liked him, which of course made everyone like him even more. Mitchum once joked that he got by on luck and laziness, but in truth it was his aura that carried him. In a city full of pretense, he was pure authenticity. He didn't chase attention, it followed him everywhere. Number 14, Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis looked like he'd been carved from movie star marble and dipped in charisma. With his dark hair, bright smile, and effortless confidence, Curtis became the golden boy of the 1950s. But his off-screen magnetism was even more legendary than his on-screen charm. There was something about him that pulled people in, especially his leading ladies. Curtis had that mix of swagger and sweetness that made him irresistible. He wasn't just handsome, he was funny, quick-witted, and knew exactly how to turn a scene partner into an admirer. On film sets like Some Like It Hot and Sweet Smell of Success, co-stars couldn't help but gush about how charming he was between takes. He was a man who knew his effect, but didn't take himself too seriously. In interviews, Curtis loved to tease about his appeal, but he also had a surprising humility underneath it all. He grew up poor in New York and never forgot it, which made his confidence feel earned, not arrogant. Directors said he could steal a scene just by walking into it. His charm wasn't an act, it was instinct. He knew when to flash that grin, when to lean in, and when to walk away. And that's why he became the kind of actor women adored and men wanted to be. Tony Curtis didn't just play smooth operators, he defined the type. Number 13, Burt Lancaster. Before he became one of Hollywood's most powerful stars, Burt Lancaster was a circus acrobat, and it showed. His athletic build, commanding presence, and piercing blue eyes made him look like he'd stepped straight out of a myth. But it wasn't just the way he looked, it was the way he carried himself. Lancaster didn't perform confidence. He was confidence. In films like From Here to Eternity and Elmer Gantry, Lancaster's physicality became a cinematic trademark. Every movement, every glance felt deliberate, like a man completely in control of his world. On set, his energy was magnetic. Actresses often said they felt an electric charge just being near him. He brought an intensity that made every scene feel alive. But Lancaster wasn't just muscle and magnetism. He had a sharp mind and a serious sense of discipline. He was one of the first actors to start his own production company, proving he wasn't just another studio puppet. He used his star power to tell stories that mattered to him. Still, it was that mixture of strength and sensitivity that made him irresistible. He could look like he'd conquer the world, then turn around and give a smile that melted everyone in the room. Burt Lancaster didn't just act, he embodied power and passion in equal measure. Number 12, Clark Gable. When Hollywood crowned Clark Gable the king, no one dared disagree. With his rugged charm, deep voice, and perfectly tilted grin, Gable defined masculinity for a generation. But behind that effortless cool was a man whose confidence wasn't an act, it was a way of life. In Gone with the Wind, Gable's performance as Rhett Butler didn't just make him a legend, it made him the fantasy of every leading lady in town. He had a natural authority that didn't need to shout. Co-stars said his quiet charm could light up a room faster than any spotlight. There was something about his presence, controlled, smooth, and self-assured, that left people entranced. Off-screen, he was known for being a gentleman, never flashy, but always composed. He preferred the outdoors to parties, often flying his own plane or disappearing into the countryside to hunt or fish. That balance between sophistication and rawness gave him an edge that few could match. For many, Gable represented the perfect man, refined enough to wear a tuxedo-like armor, but rugged enough to look just as comfortable covered in dust. His appeal wasn't about being loud, it was about quiet power. Clark Gable didn't need to chase attention. He already had it the moment he walked into any room. Number 11. Errol Flynn. Few stars lived larger than Errol Flynn. Swashbuckling hero on screen, unpredictable legend off it, Flynn became the ultimate embodiment of Hollywood adventure. From Captain Blood to the adventures of Robin Hood, he wasn't just playing charming rogues, he was one. Audiences loved him, and actresses were utterly captivated by him. Flynn's magnetism wasn't rehearsed. It came from a kind of fearless energy that filled every frame. He moved like a man who owned the room and knew it. Off-screen, his charm was the same, effortless, daring, and impossible to ignore. Gossip writers couldn't get enough of his larger-than-life personality, and his co-stars often admitted he made every film set feel like an unpredictable thrill ride. But behind the charm was also wit. Flynn was well-read, witty, and deeply aware of the myths that surrounded him. He joked about them, sometimes even feeding the gossip with a wink and a smile. His combination of intelligence and charisma made him dangerously appealing. Though his life had its ups and downs, his allure never faded. Decades later, his name still sparks stories and fascination. Errol Flynn didn't just play the charming adventurer, he lived it. And that's what made him the man every actress wanted to share a scene with, both on screen and off. Number 10. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando wasn't just another actor, he was a revolution in motion. When he arrived on screen in A Streetcar Named Desire in the early 1950s, audiences felt something they had never seen before: raw, unfiltered magnetism. He didn't act like a movie star. He moved, spoke, and breathed like a real person, and that authenticity made him dangerously appealing. Brando's intensity didn't stop when the cameras turned off. He carried an unpredictable energy that drew people in like a magnet. Co-stars described him as mysterious, deep, and impossible to forget. He had the kind of presence that made everyone around him lean in, curious to understand what made him tick. And that curiosity only grew as his fame did. What made Brando different was his refusal to play by the rules. He wore old jeans when others wore tuxedos, mumbled when others delivered polished lines, and turned every script into something alive. His natural confidence bordering on rebellion was intoxicating. Even his critics admitted there was no one else like him. Actresses who worked opposite Brando often said he could make silence feel charged. Every glance, every pause carried meaning. He didn't have to say much. His presence did all the talking. Brando didn't just change acting, he changed attraction itself. He showed that true allure wasn't about perfection. It was about power, honesty, and mystery rolled into one unforgettable man. Number 9. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was the quiet storm of Golden Age Hollywood. Where others shouted for attention, Clift whispered, and everyone still listened. His kind eyes, boyish looks, and soft voice hid an emotional depth that left both audiences and co-stars completely spellbound. Clift's appeal wasn't built on swagger, it came from his vulnerability. In films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity, he projected a sensitivity that felt shockingly real for its time. He made people feel like they truly knew him, even when he barely said a word. That emotional honesty made him stand out in an era built on polished facades. Actresses who worked with Clift often described him as deeply empathetic, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. That quiet confidence paired with his striking looks created an irresistible combination. He had an artist's soul in a leading man's body, a rare balance that drew people to him, both on and off set. Clift didn't rely on traditional Hollywood bravado. He didn't need to. His eyes told stories long before his mouth did. He brought tenderness to masculinity, and that made him magnetic in a way few others could match. While many Golden Age stars played heroes, Clift felt human, and that's what made him unforgettable. Number 8. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was pure intensity wrapped in a square jaw and ambition. With that signature dimpled chin and burning gaze, he didn't just act in movies, he charged through them. In Spartacus and Ace in the Hole, Douglas commanded the screen like a man on a mission, and audiences couldn't look away. What made him irresistible wasn't just his strength, it was his unstoppable drive. Douglas had the energy of a man who refused to lose. On screen, that made him riveting. Off screen, it made him magnetic. Co-stars said he was demanding, passionate, and endlessly confident, a man who lived life at full volume. He often played fighters, rebels, and outlaws, and that spirit carried over into real life. When he smiled, it felt like a dare. When he walked into a room, it felt like a challenge. He radiated an almost electric confidence that drew people in, whether they wanted to be or not. But beneath that fierce exterior was a mind as sharp as his stare. Douglas wasn't just a star, he was a producer, a thinker, and a man who fought for creative freedom long before it was fashionable. That combination of brawn, brain, and boldness made him one of Hollywood's most compelling figures. Kirk Douglas didn't have to chase admiration, it came running to him. Number 7. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson was Hollywood's ultimate leading man, tall, handsome, and effortlessly charming. When he appeared in Magnificent Obsession and Pillow Talk, audiences swooned. He had that old-fashioned kind of presence, the kind that made people stop mid-sentence just to stare. Hudson's appeal was more than just his looks. He had a calm confidence that made him seem safe yet exciting at the same time. His co-stars adored him, describing him as warm, funny, and incredibly attentive. He didn't just act romantic, he felt romantic. Every gesture, every line delivery came with genuine sincerity, making it impossible not to be drawn to him. Off-screen, he was famously private, but that only added to his mystique. The more he kept to himself, the more people wanted to know. He was a reminder that real charm doesn't need noise, it thrives in quiet assurance. Rock Hudson represented everything the Golden Age adored: poise, power, and the kind of grace that couldn't be faked. His performances carried emotional truth, and his presence lingered long after the credits rolled. To this day, his image remains the blueprint for classic Hollywood masculinity: steady, sincere, and completely captivating. Number 6. Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen didn't need to say much to make an impression. He was cool before cool had a definition. With that slow grin, steady eyes, and effortless swagger, McQueen turned stillness into strength. You couldn't tell if he was about to start a fight or steal your heart, and that's exactly why people couldn't look away. In films like The Great Escape and Bullet, McQueen radiated independence. He didn't just play heroes, he was one. His real-life love for motorcycles, racing, and danger made his on-screen roles feel authentic. He was the guy every man wanted to be and every woman wanted to understand. On set, his quiet focus was legendary. He didn't talk about confidence, he embodied it. His co-stars often said that when McQueen looked at you, it was like he saw right through you. That intensity wasn't aggressive, it was magnetic. What made him unforgettable was that contradiction. The tough guy with a hint of loneliness. He carried that combination of danger and vulnerability that made people crave more. McQueen wasn't polished or predictable, he was pure instinct. He didn't have to act cool, it came naturally. And that's why, even decades later, the king of cool still reigns supreme in Hollywood memory. Number 5. John Garfield. Before James Dean ever brooded his way onto a screen, there was John Garfield, the original rebel of classic Hollywood. He wasn't polished, he wasn't perfect, and that's exactly why everyone loved him. Garfield had a raw magnetism that felt authentic, a mix of street smarts and sensitivity that made audiences and co-stars hang on every word. In films like Body and Soul and The Postman Always Rings Twice, Garfield brought intensity that burned through the screen. He didn't act like a matinee idol. He acted like a man with fire in his veins. Directors loved his naturalism, and actresses adored the quiet confidence behind his smirk. He didn't need the typical Hollywood sheen. His rough edges made him even more captivating. Off-screen, Garfield carried that same magnetic pull. He grew up tough in New York and never lost that energy. He was the kind of man who could make a crowded room go silent without saying a word. That combination of strength and vulnerability, the fighter who could also feel deeply, made him irresistible. Garfield's career was brief but unforgettable. He was one of the first actors to bring realism to the big screen, paving the way for Brando and Clift. Yet it wasn't just his acting that made him iconic, it was the way he embodied passion itself. He showed that true charisma doesn't come from polish or perfection, but from being unapologetically real. Number 4. Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty arrived just as the golden age was fading, but his reputation carried all the old-school heat of classic Hollywood. With his sculpted looks, easy confidence, and smooth voice, Beatty didn't need introduction. People felt his presence before he even spoke. By the early 1960s, he was already known for turning heads everywhere he went. Beatty's rise began with Splendor in the Grass, where his mix of innocence and quiet power made him a sensation. He had a way of commanding attention simply by existing. On screen, he radiated both charm and control, and off-screen, that same charisma made him the center of every conversation. What set Beatty apart wasn't just his looks, it was his intellect. He was sharp, strategic, and ambitious, choosing roles that challenged audiences. He wasn't content being just another pretty face. He wanted to build a legacy. Co-stars often said he had an irresistible mix of self-assurance and curiosity, the kind of person who made you feel seen even in a crowded room. Beatty's confidence was effortless, not arrogant. He knew the effect he had, but he never needed to flaunt it. That subtlety made him even more magnetic. In an era obsessed with image, he combined brains, beauty, and mystery, a rare trinity that made actresses crave every second of his attention. Warren Beatty wasn't just admired, he was studied. Number 3. Burt Reynolds. Though he rose to fame slightly after Hollywood's golden age, Burt Reynolds carried its spirit, that bold, mischievous masculinity that defined old-school charm. With his trademark grin, playful attitude, and athletic build, Reynolds redefined what it meant to be both rugged and irresistible. His breakout roles in Deliverance and Smokey and the Bandit made him a household name. But what really made him unforgettable was his confidence. Reynolds had a knack for making everyone around him feel like part of the fun. He joked easily, smiled often, and had the kind of charisma that didn't feel forced. Co-stars often said he could make even the quietest person in the room light up. Unlike many stars who tried to hide behind carefully crafted images, Reynolds leaned into his charm with humor. He didn't take himself too seriously, which made his appeal all the more genuine. That blend of confidence and playfulness made him a fan favorite, and a favorite among his leading ladies too. Burt Reynolds embodied that classic kind of magnetism Hollywood had nearly forgotten. He didn't rely on mystery, he relied on warmth. He was proof that a great smile and a good laugh could go just as far as any dramatic pose. Reynolds didn't just charm people, he made them feel like they were part of his adventure. Number 2. Sean Connery. Sean Connery didn't just play James Bond, he became the definition of suave. From the moment he appeared in Dr. No in 1962, his deep voice and commanding presence turned him into a global symbol of confidence. He wasn't just stylish, he was magnetic in a way that made sophistication look effortless. Connery's appeal came from his balance of refinement and ruggedness. He could walk into a scene in a tuxedo and still look like he could win a brawl seconds later. That combination fascinated audiences and co-stars alike. Women admired his poise. Men admired his composure. He made confidence look easy, the kind of calm power that didn't need to shout. Off-screen, Connery was just as captivating. He carried himself with quiet assurance and wit, always aware of the mystique that surrounded him. Interviewers often noted that he had the rare ability to make everyone feel like they were the only person in the room. Connery wasn't about flash or excess, he was about presence. He proved that true magnetism isn't loud, it's quiet control. Even decades later, his version of charisma remains unmatched. Sean Connery wasn't just admired for his roles, he defined the word leading man. Every actor who followed tried to capture even a fraction of that effortless command. Number 1. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley may have entered Hollywood through music, but once the cameras rolled, there was no denying his power as a leading man. By the late 1950s, he had become the ultimate symbol of charm, rhythm, and raw confidence. He didn't just walk into a scene, he electrified it. In films like Jailhouse Rock and King Creole, Elvis brought something new to the screen, a kind of youthful energy that blended innocence with undeniable allure. His moves were smooth, his voice carried warmth, and his grin could light up any theater. But beyond the music and fame, what made him magnetic was his authenticity. He didn't act like a star, he acted like himself. Actresses who worked with Elvis often said he had an effortless kindness paired with an irresistible confidence. He listened, laughed easily, and carried a quiet humility that made his charm even more powerful. Fans adored him not because he seemed untouchable, but because he felt real, a rare quality in Hollywood's golden glow. Elvis wasn't just adored for his looks or his fame. It was his energy, that spark that made people feel alive just by watching him. Even after all these years, his influence lingers everywhere. The world called him the King, but to those who shared the screen with him, he was something else entirely unforgettable. So there you have it, 15 Golden Age legends who proved confidence could be as powerful as talent. They didn't need social media or modern fame to make hearts race. They just had to walk into a room. Each man left behind more than a film legacy. They left a standard for charm that's never been matched. Which one do you think ruled the era of allure? Let us know in the comments below.